Will you please pray with me? May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight. O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. It is so good to be back. I really missed you. I want to offer a big thank you for keeping things going here and allowing me the time away from with my family. And I especially want to thank Kathy for all the things she did to keep the balls in the air when they started to fall when Lily had COVID. Thank you, Kathy. That was an amazing experience. I woke up to texts and emails from Lily saying, what am I going to do? And I said, contact Kathy, and I'm all, what's happening? And it was all taken care of. So completely taken care of. I didn't have to get involved at all. So that was a great gift. Thank you. I come back to you transformed and energized by my experiences in South Africa and Namibia. And I come back reflecting on this passage from the lectionary this week, this wonderful passage from Paul's letter to the early Christians in Ephesus. A passage in which Paul prays that they be rooted and grounded in love, in which he prays that they perceive the enormity of God's love for them, and that they experience it and have it fill them up. So I want to start by asking you all a question. Have you had experiences like this, where you've truly felt rooted and grounded in love, filled up with a sense of God in you and all around you, where the love and light could not help but spill out of you? I'd like to tell you about a few of these experiences from my own life in the last few weeks. For while my trip was a bucket list adventure of a family vacation, to be sure, it also turned out to be a deeply spiritual time for me as well. So we arrived in Johannesburg, South Africa after a cross-country flight to Newark, New Jersey, a 6-hour layover, and then a 3-hour delay taking off while sitting on the tarmac, followed by a 15-hour flight. Needless to say, I was exhausted, but there was no way I could sleep due to the time change. The jet lag really got me. And so for the first couple of nights, I was awake 4 to 5 hours each night. But instead of tossing and turning and lamenting that everyone else seems to be able to sleep but me, which is what I usually do, I focused on quieting my mind and I listened. I knew I was on the front edge of what I hoped to be a transformative experience, and I wanted to be mindful of that. And what came to me was, be still and know. Be still and know that I am here. Be still and know that I'm with you. Be still and know I am. I am with you as you lie down beside still waters. I will restore your soul. And mind you, this is not some gimmick. I was not consciously thinking about the introit that was planned for this morning. That is a beautiful serendipity. And I didn't hear this message as a voice or as a set of directives, but as snippets that came to me of love, of reassurance, of presence. My frustration over not being able to sleep was replaced by a deep assurance and reminder of God's presence in all I was to experience. And so I entered my time in Africa with a stillness and a calmness in my spirit, open to what was to come. And before we traveled to where we would experience our safari, we spent a day and a half in Johannesburg. And we went on a tour of the city and of the Soweto township with our guide, Tumi. Now, Tumi was born in Soweto and was a fountain of information about the history and makeup of both Johannesburg and of Soweto. And it turns out that everything I thought I knew about Soweto was completely wrong. The picture in my mind of the Soweto township was of desperately poor people living in makeshift shacks. But as it turns out, Soweto is a functioning city of 1.7 million people, with an established upper class and middle class. Only 9% of the population of Soweto are the poorest of the poor, living in the kinds of structures I imagined. Soweto is home to the largest hospital in the Southern Hemisphere, with 3,200 beds and 150 babies born every day there. Soweto is also home to the only street in the world to have had 2 Nobel laureates reside on it, Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. We toured the Mandela House on that street, which is now a museum dedicated to his legacy and leadership. And we found out at the museum that the American CIA had worked against Mandela and the anti-apartheid movement, which only added to my sense that what I thought I knew did not reflect the whole truth. And this reinforced the need to keep my mind open, to keep learning, to acknowledge all that I did not know. But what was very clear is that the love and reverence for Mandela and for Archbishop Tutu was evident wherever we traveled in South Africa. And it was so clear to me that the transformational leadership of each of these men was truly rooted and grounded in love, and was continuing to bear fruit even after their deaths. We left Johannesburg and traveled just outside of Kruger National Park, where we had our time on safari. And from the beginning, I was enchanted by the beauty and the diversity of creation. From the giant mounds of the fungus-growing termites to the towering giraffes and their fuzzy babies, to the herd of elephants which enjoyed the watering hole where we were staying. Clement, our guide, and Derek, our tracker, were steeped in the knowledge and experience with the animals and the ecosystem. But more than that, they were rooted and grounded in love for all of creation. It felt like with every animal sighting, we were invited into a deeper and deeper appreciation for each species' unique place and role in their environment. Here's what I wrote in my journal. The diversity and majesty of God's creation is so evident here. Each animal is like a beautiful prototype for its species. They are not at all like the animals we see at the zoo. It is a gift to see healthy animals living in a balanced ecosystem where everything belongs and has its purpose. It is incredible. It is hard to believe this exists on the same planet as our everyday lives. Clement and Derek exuded love for their work educating about the remarkable animals, and love for the people like us, soaking in all their knowledge as best we could. Now, as you can probably tell, I could go on and on and on about my trip, and I probably will in the weeks to come. I experienced a fullness of spirit, a reverence for the love of God and the source of life and light so strongly over the last few weeks. It was definitely mountaintop stuff. But this isn't reflective of how we experience life most of the time. I was outside of the mundane, routine experiences of my life in the real world. So how might we think of this passage from Paul in light of our day-to-day experiences, instead of the times when we're on the proverbial mountaintops of our lives? And here I think it's helpful to remember that it is likely that Paul wrote to the Ephesians from a prison cell. These inspiring words did not come from the mountaintop, but from an experience of bleakness. We can imagine that no more than a single shaft of sunlight could pierce a crack in the wall and penetrate the gloom of Paul's prison cell. He was trapped in darkness, and by all human measures, Paul's situation could cause one to experience profound despair. Yet we can imagine that there existed a single beam of light. And through that beam of light, Paul was able to follow its source clear back to the sun. It still shined even while he was in the dark. It always shines, as does the source of that star's power, the love of Christ and of God. It was just the one shaft of light, not much to it, not much to go on. You can barely see anything with so small a light beam, but it pointed to so much more. Paul did not despair over how small his light was, but remembered its source and took joy in the vastness of the ultimate source of that light. Now, I don't need to tell you that these are anxious times. Some of us are dealing with health issues, with family issues, with the myriad challenges and stresses of life. And these are collectively anxious times as well, as the deep divisions in our country are on stark display as we enter the frenzy of election season. The love of God may be hard to grasp, may be hard to see, may feel very far away. We may struggle to feel connected to our source, to the love of God, and to one another. We may struggle to feel rooted and grounded when anxiety and chaos are ruling the day. But the love that roots us and grounds us is always there. Perhaps we can only perceive a tiny shred, but our spiritual task is to begin to notice these tiny shreds, the inbreaking of love in the midst of all that consumes and distracts us. And as a faith community, we have the privilege of being rooted and grounded in love together. And so we can help one another perceive how God's love is working in and among us as we learn together and we grow together and serve together. For the truth is that at the bright center of the universe, there is love. Abounding, unimaginable love. It is the source of all we know. It is the deepest answer to our hardest questions. It is our birthright, and it is our destiny. Paul's wish and prayer is for the Ephesians to be filled up to the brim of as much of this very love as they can manage to perceive. And so my prayer for you mirrors Paul's ancient prayer to the church at Ephesus. May you be rooted and grounded in the love of God. May you perceive it and may it strengthen you. And may you be filled to overflowing with the love that will never let you go. Amen and amen.